And welcome back to RGR. We are back, so Matt Derrick's back. We have things to talk about. And if you didn't catch the episode on the podcast, go check that out as well over at Locked On Chiefs. And today, we're going to cover here that a couple of tweaks, a lot about Steve Spagnuolo, but I want to talk about the rookies in general. Obviously, a little hiccup with Clyde Edwards-Helaire missing a practice, not a big deal. But he spoke again later in the week. And the big takeaway for me is that not only is he comfortable in his role, but he's comfortable getting further down the road, and largely because of Darrel Williams, who filled in for him with the first team when he was out, but is a guy that I didn't actually realize that they shared the backfield room at LSU.
Oh, yeah. When Edwards-Helaire got drafted, I asked him about his relationship with Darrel Williams, and he's like, Darrel Williams was, my big brother. He was the guy that introduced him and really kind of took care of him his freshman year, and they spent a lot of time together. So yeah, I mean, he sees Darrel Williams as a big influence in his life, and so being back together with those two, having Williams around, I think is absolutely a great influence for Edwards-Helaire, especially with Damian Williams not being around. Darrel Williams is essentially the veteran of that group, especially in Kansas City. So, yeah, I mean, I think that Edwards-Helaire is certainly going to be looking to Darrel for a lot of support there. But you're right. I mean, everything that you've heard right now from Edwards-Helaire, from the coaches to the players, has all been positive about how quickly he is picking up things. We talked about, when he'd said a few weeks ago that he thought that Andy Reid's offense was easy to pick up. The question was going to be, is his football IQ that high, or is he just overconfident because he hasn't gotten on the field yet? And right now, the answer is leaning a lot more towards football IQ than anything else, because he still seems very confident with where he's at. The players and coaches are really impressed with what they've seen so far. And yeah, you're seeing the fantasy stock for Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going through the roof right now.
I guess I can't blame that. For me, I think the stock that I'm most concerned about is one that I'm positive about too, because I keep hearing that he's doing well and picking up protection. And he's certainly happy to comment about that being a focus for him. It's got to be for him to be the starter, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, once again, I mean, we talked about it before. Darrel Williams and Clyde Edwards-Helaire are both just the long line of LSU running backs that the Chiefs have had some success with. Yeah. And one of the reasons they like them is because they get great coaching. Those guys played for Kevin Falk, who played in the NFL for 85 years. So he's got plenty of experience, and they all have a big relationship with him as a coach. So they come into the league well coached. They understand the NFL game. Because they've been playing in an NFL-style offense. They've been playing for an NFL player with a ton of experience. So they come to the league prepared. And it's worked out for them in some cases. But you can see guys like maybe Edwards-Helaire and Williams, who maybe are not traditional running backs and, maybe size and athleticism, but they get the coaching. And as a result, you get somebody who maybe is a little undersized like Edwards-Helaire, but you get the coaching. That is what makes them a big player.
Yeah, and they've made up that gap already, and it makes them pro-ready. I think that's important. Beyond those two, and I think I'm really looking forward to some split-back formations. I'm not sure if we're going to see that early or not, but I hope that we see it eventually. He's clearly the highlight of the class, but we're seeing a lot and hearing a lot from Willie Gate Jr. I think that he spoke about not only how he's coming along, but what his role is currently. And it looks like they're doing some very similar things to what they did last year, trying to find a spot for him, playing him a little bit at Sam, a little bit at what he called Buck, the Will in the nickel package. Where do you think that he gets his best shot to actually play?
Yeah, I mean, Chiefs are going to spend most of their time in sub packages. So yeah, the fact that he is playing that Buck position and the Buffalo package, as they call it, that's huge, because that means that he'd likely be out there with Anthony Hitchens an awful lot. And clearly, the fact that he's working on positions that aren't Anthony's spots tells you that they're planning on pairing those two together quite a bit. If that's the case, and you see Damian Wilson playing in a substitution role as his own, maybe kind of a platoon spot, if you will. That leaves, Ben Neiman, playing filling in here in some spots as well, because he can play multiple positions in that group. But I think it's telling that they're focusing on those two positions for Gay. They're not trying to overload him in a rookie season with no off season. which, to me, when I had asked Steve Spagnuolo back in the offseason about how they maybe envision using Willie Gay, his first comparison was, Reggie Ragland. And I don't necessarily even say that from the positions that they play, although they may be somewhat similar, but I think it's more about playing time and how he feels like maybe using him. So I don't think the plan is going to be to get Willie Gay out there for 80 plays a game, but they want to be able to use him in the specific spots where his skill set's best. Don't overload him, make him a part-time player, but at the same time, there might be weeks you see him 40% of the snaps and maybe 70% of the snaps in another game.
And I like that differentiation because I have, from what I've seen of Spags playbooks from the past, I have glimpsed a few of them back from New York and back from St. Louis. The Buffalo package is specific in that you have 2 tackles in front of you. It's not necessarily the all-out pass rush set of downs, where I think they're more apt to go into the single back or dime kind of look, omitting Willie at that point because just letting Anthony be Anthony.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Anthony Hitchens is still going to be your ever down linebacker. That's the position. And Ben Niemann is likely going to be his backup because Anthony is the quarterback on the field. He's the guy calling the plays. And the guy that is most prepared to do that and who's done it before in the past is Niemann. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see those 2 guys on the field, at all times. Niemann can back up other spots, but the fact that, they're preparing Gay for, those 2 positions, I think you're right. Absolutely shows that they're not going to demand that he be the guy this year. That's a lot to put on a rookie anyway, much less in this offseason. So they're going to use him in specific spots, but at the same time, those positions should prepare him for the day when he is the guy, because they do think he can be that.
That brings me to the back of the defense. And obviously we're talking rookies, but there's a lot more rookie defenders on this class. So because of the injuries, because of the way that they're getting reps, I think really it comes down to me is what's going on in your estimation with L'Jarius Sneed, who I think is now LJ according to Spags. I got to remember that because that's going to save me in typing.
Spags has nicknames for everybody,
right? So. And I'm going to steal them all. But then also you have Lavert Hill and you have a number of guys who could get there. Bo Peep Keys is now back. Do you still see that as a boon? And does this change their fortunes for the 53?
Yeah, that's a position that is going to be really interesting to see as the next couple of weeks, because, from my understanding, that would leave Rashad Fenton playing the slot. But you know what? I can certainly envision that, if they start the season as we expect without Breland, that you see Ward and Fenton on the outside. Fenton kicks inside when someone comes in on the outside, and who's that going to be at this point? It's a competition. I mean, you're right. I mean, they got a lot of young guys. L'Jarius Sneed, I think the expectation is the most advanced at this point of the group as far as just skill set goes. Bo Peep Keys, I think, is going to be a really interesting case because I think we've talked about before that, because he's a draft pick, I think there's a really high expectations. But remember, he was going to likely be an undrafted free agent, and the Chiefs moved into the draft to get him because they knew they couldn't sign him as an undrafted free agent because he had other offers for more money. So that's, I think changes the expectations about what you're going to get with Keys a little bit. So yeah, but there's a lot of question mark there. And, I know the Chiefs even had a couple of corners in for tryouts on Monday. I think that's a position of concern that they're still looking for who might be the backups. I mean, they've got 5 guys that I think you could say would be a really good bet to make the roster. But at the same time, that's a group that if you had to go into battle with, a couple of them starting, I think you're really worried about that position. Especially in the first part of the season with Deshaun and Lamar. I mean, these are probable matchups that are going to be difficult. So I'm with you there. And I think the one thing that maybe covered them up is the return of Juan Thornhill. He looks more built to me. He looks like he's in good shape from this point, from just what we see on the sidelines. But do you have any concerns about him for week 1 at this point? I mean, I still don't. I think the expectation he's still going to be there. There's still time, so I don't think there's any big rush. And I think the other reason why there's not a big rush is they want to see what they got in Tedrick Thompson. They want to give him some work. This is a guy that, they brought in for a reason. I mean, he's certainly someone that they feel like if Thornhill isn't ready for the beginning of the season, this is a guy who could step in. had some experience in Seattle. He started there, and Seattle's got a serious backfield. Mm-hmm. So, you know, even though there were some injuries there in Seattle that kind of led to his playing time, he's had good coaching, you know, and clearly the Chiefs see something. But right now they want to kind of see what they got in him, and if he is someone who could fit in with a little bit of what they do. Because remember, they're looking by and large too for somebody who can replace what Kendall Fuller did last year. Yeah. And that's one of the things, I mean, they're going to continue to mix up and see. And don't be surprised if you hear different lineups as far as, you know, who's playing in training camp and who's getting some looks with the ones, because, you know, Steve Spagnuolo is going to be testing to see just what is his best group and who can do that kind of, you know, Kendall Fuller utility role that he played last year. And
like Spag said the other day, they're still looking to figure it out. So with that, thank you for all of your time. We'll be back with you next week. Appreciate it.
Sounds good, Ryan. Take care.